I decided to leave my wife's boss's party early, but what I heard outside his office changed my life. 5 seconds of conversation through a cracked door was all it took to shatter 7 years of marriage, like a sledgehammer through stained glass. Looking back now, I should have seen the signs. They were everywhere, waving frantically in my face, but I was too comfortable in my carefully constructed illusion to notice. My name is Alex Morgan. I'm an insurance salesman from Springfield. Not the most glamorous profession, but it pays the bills and occasionally allows for a decent vacation. I specialize in life insurance, ironically spending my days helping people prepare for worst-case scenarios while completely missing the disaster unfolding in my own home. My wife, Laura, works as a financial analyst at the prestigious Westbridge Capital. She's brilliant with numbers, graduated top of her class from Wharton, and reminds me of this fact whenever we argue about our finances. We met at a mutual friend's wedding 8 years ago. I was immediately captivated by her razor-sharp wit and the way she could command attention in any room. What I didn't realize then was that people who crave the spotlight rarely enjoy sharing it. That fateful Friday began like any other. I was closing up a decent policy with a new client when Laura texted me, "Don't forget Garrett's party tonight. Wear the gray Hugo Boss suit I bought you. This is important." I'd completely forgotten about the party. Her boss, Garrett Stanley, the managing director of Westbridge Capital's Midwest Division, was throwing one of his legendary soirees at his rooftop villa in the exclusive Lakeside Heights neighborhood. Laura had been talking about it for weeks, mentioning repeatedly how crucial it was for her career that we make an appearance and network effectively. What she meant, of course, was that I should stand around looking presentable while she charmed the important people. After 7 years together, I'd learned to play my part. I arrived home at 6:15 to find Laura already dressed in a sleek black cocktail dress that probably cost more than my monthly car payment. She was applying her lipstick in the hallway mirror, barely acknowledging my entrance. "You're cutting it close," she said, her eyes never leaving her reflection. "Car's coming in 15 minutes. "Hello to you too," I muttered, loosening my tie as I headed for the shower. "Had a great day. Thanks for asking." "Don't start, Alex." Her voice took on that warning tone I'd become all too familiar with. "This isn't just another office mixer. Half the executive board will be there. Garrett specifically mentioned wanting to introduce me to some people." I stepped into the shower, letting the hot water wash away the day's stress and the growing unease in my stomach. There had been a lot of important events lately, a lot of specifically mentioned moments that somehow never included me beyond my capacity as Laura's well-dressed accessory. By 7:30, we were stepping out of an Uber at the entrance to Garrett's building, a gleaming tower of glass and steel overlooking the river. The doorman nodded respectfully at Laura, as if he recognized her, which struck me as odd since we'd never visited Garrett's home before. "Ms. Bennett, good evening," he said. Bennett, her maiden name. I felt a small pinch of something unpleasant. "You've been here before?" I asked as we rode the elevator to the penthouse. She adjusted her earring. "Just for a few work meetings. Garrett sometimes hosts the strategy team here when we're working late." She gave me a quick, perfunctory smile. "The view helps with creativity," he says. The elevator opened directly into Garrett Stanley's penthouse, revealing a scene straight out of a luxury magazine spread. Floor-to-ceiling windows offered a panoramic view of the city skyline, now twinkling with evening lights. Modern art pieces that probably cost more than our house adorned the minimalist white walls. At least 60 people in designer attire clutched champagne flutes, their laughter and conversation creating a symphony of privilege. I felt out of place immediately. Despite wearing the expensive suit Laura had selected, I might as well have shown up in sweatpants. These people exuded old money confidence, the kind you can't fake with a nice watch and polished shoes. "Laura!" A tall, silver-haired man in his 50s approached us, arms outstretched. Garrett Stanley had the tanned skin of someone who vacations on private islands and the physique of a man who pays top dollar to keep aging at bay. "You made it. And this must be Alan?" "Alex," I corrected, extending my hand. "Alex Morgan. Nice to finally meet you, Garrett. Laura speaks highly of you." His handshake was firm but brief, his attention already shifting back to my wife. "The Tokyo team just arrived. They're eager to hear about your projections for the Asian markets." He placed his hand on the small of Laura's back with familiar ease. "I hope you don't mind if I steal her away for a bit, Alan. Bars over there, top shelf everything. Help yourself." Before I could correct him again, They were gone, swallowed by the crowd of beautiful, important people. I stood awkwardly for a moment before making my way to the bar, where a mixologist who looked like he moonlighted as a model offered me a selection of craft cocktails with ingredients I couldn't pronounce. Just a scotch, neat, I said, opting for simplicity. The Macallan 25 or the Balvenie 30? He asked, as if these were the only reasonable options. Whichever's closest, I replied, earning a barely concealed look of disdain. Drink in hand, I surveyed the room. I recognized a few faces from Laura's office Christmas party last year, but most were strangers. They clustered in tight circles, speaking in the shorthand of people who share professional and social contexts. Inside jokes about market fluctuations, vacation homes in places I'd never visit, private school applications for children named after Greek gods or British counties. Laura was across the room, surrounded by 4 men in bespoke suits, laughing with her head thrown back, her hand resting on the arm of a tall blonde guy who looked like he'd stepped out of a cologne advertisement. She was in her element, brilliant, beautiful, commanding. I felt a familiar twinge of pride mingled with something darker. After 30 minutes of mindless scrolling on my phone and nodding politely at passing guests, I decided to rescue Laura from what was surely an obligation to introduce me to her colleagues. I approached just as she was making some point about cryptocurrency regulations, her hands animatedly gesturing. Which is why the SEC's approach is fundamentally misguided, she was saying. They're trying to regulate tomorrow's technology with yesterday's framework. The blonde man was nodding appreciatively. That's exactly what I've been saying. The decentralized nature of blockchain demands a completely new regulatory paradigm. I cleared my throat. Sorry to interrupt. Laura turned, her smile flickering almost imperceptibly. Alex, there you are. I was just explaining our position on crypto regulation to the team. She gestured to the blonde man. This is Justin, our new project manager for digital assets. Justin extended his hand with the confidence of someone who's never been rejected. Justin Keller. Great to finally meet you, Alex. Laura mentions you occasionally. Occasionally? Nice. Nice, I grumbled, shaking his hand perhaps a bit too firmly. His grip matched mine, and there was something challenging in his eyes. A silent communication between males that predates civilization. But no one seemed to notice this primitive exchange except us. The conversation quickly returned to market projections and client acquisition strategies, leaving me nodding at terms I vaguely understood while watching Laura's body language. She stood closer to Justin than necessary, her back partially turned to me, creating a subtle exclusion. When she laughed at his comments, it was with her whole body. Too loud, too enthusiastic. Her hand touched his arm to emphasize points, lingered on his shoulder when moving past him to grab a fresh drink. I wasn't imagining it. My wife was flirting, not the casual, meaningless kind, but the deliberate type born of genuine attraction. And I stood there like an unnecessary piece of furniture, a relic from a previous decorating scheme that no longer matched the aesthetic. After an hour of this torture, I leaned in close to Laura's ear. I think I might head out soon, early meeting tomorrow. Her smile remained fixed, but her eyes flashed with irritation. Alex, please don't ruin the evening. Just relax. The night's barely started. I'm not trying to ruin anything, I whispered. I just feel like I'm intruding on a work function. You're being ridiculous. She turned back to her colleagues, effectively dismissing me. So as I was saying about the Morgan Stanley report, I retreated, finding my way to the open balcony where the spring air offered temporary respite from the suffocating atmosphere inside. The city stretched below me, thousands of lives unfolding in lighted windows. How many other husbands were feeling like strangers in their own marriages tonight? How many were watching their wives laugh too loudly with handsome colleagues while pretending not to notice? Standing there, looking out at the skyline, I had a moment of clarity. I had nothing to do here. This wasn't my world. Perhaps it had never been. Laura and I had been drifting apart so gradually I hadn't noticed the widening gulf until we were shouting at each other across an ocean. I pulled out my phone and ordered an Uber. 7 minutes away. I could endure 7 more minutes of this charade before escaping to the quiet of my empty house. I decided to let Laura know I was leaving rather than simply disappearing. It seemed like the adult thing to do, though I was tempted by the latter option. As I walked back through the apartment, navigating around clusters of animated conversations and waitstaff with trays of tiny, elaborately constructed appetizers, I noticed Laura was no longer with Justin and the finance bros. I scanned the room but couldn't locate her distinctive copper hair and black dress among the crowd. Looking for Laura? A woman I vaguely recognized from the Christmas party, Jennifer or Jessica from accounting, appeared at my elbow, clutching a martini. I think she and Justin went to Garrett's office to grab some presentation or other. Down that hallway. She pointed to a corridor branching off from the main living area. Thanks, I said, heading in that direction. The hallway was dimly lit compared to the main space, lined with black and white photographs of architectural landmarks from around the world. I could hear the party growing fainter behind me as I approached a partially open door at the end of the corridor. Light spilled out from the crack, along with voices, Laura's and Justin's. I wasn't planning to eavesdrop. I was simply going to knock and let Laura know I was leaving. But then I heard my name, and something in Justin's tone made me freeze. If Alex suspects something, it's a problem, Laura was saying, her voice carrying a note of concern I rarely heard. Then we need to be more careful, or stop for now, Justin replied, his voice lower, more intimate than it had been in the main room. There was a pause, and I found myself holding my breath. The next words came clearly through the gap in the door, slicing through my reality like a surgeon's scalpel. I can't, Laura said. We made a deal, and you promised to take care of everything with the move. And I will, Justin assured her. The Austin office is practically a done deal. Thomas has already approved the transfer. By July, you'll be the regional director for the entire Southwest Division, and I'll be right beside you as head of digital strategy. But what about Alex? Laura's voice had a practical, problem-solving tone, as if I were a logistical issue to be resolved rather than her husband of 7 years. What about him? You said yourself he can sell insurance anywhere. Or maybe. Justin's voice dropped even lower, but the next words reached me with perfect clarity. Maybe this is the perfect opportunity for a fresh start. All around. My vision literally darkened at the edges, as if my brain were trying to protect me from what I was hearing. My wife and her colleague were not just having an affair. They were planning to relocate to another city together, restructuring their lives around a future that had been carefully concealed from me. I heard movement inside the room and backed away silently, my heart hammering so loudly I was certain they would hear it. Somehow I managed to retreat down the hallway and through the main party area without being noticed. The faces around me blurred into a smear of unknowing smiles and laughter. Music continued to play, champagne continued to flow, but my world had stopped spinning on its axis. The Uber was waiting when I emerged from the building. I slid into the back seat, mumbled my address, and stared out the window at nothing. The driver attempted small talk, but my monosyllabic responses eventually discouraged him. We rode in silence as I replayed the conversation I'd overheard, searching for some innocent explanation, some misunderstanding. There was none. My wife was having an affair with her coworker. They were planning to move to Austin, and I was clearly not included in this vision of the future, at least not in any form that resembled our current marriage. I arrived home to an empty house that suddenly felt like a museum of falsehoods. Our wedding photo on the mantel, the Moroccan throw pillows we'd bought on our 5th anniversary trip, the wall of framed photographs documenting holidays, birthdays, weekends away, moments I'd believed were genuine, but now questioned. Had she been thinking of him even then? Had she been counting the days until she could escape this life with me? I poured myself 3 fingers of bourbon and sat in the dark, waiting. For what, I wasn't entirely sure. Clarity? Courage? The numbness that alcohol promised but rarely delivered? When Laura finally came home at 1:37 a.m., I had consumed most of the bottle but felt painfully, brutally sober. "You're still up," she said, slipping off her heels at the door. Her voice was carefully neutral, but I caught the slight slur of someone who's had too much champagne. "I thought you'd be asleep by now." "Couldn't sleep," I replied, watching her face for signs of guilt, remorse, anything that might indicate the woman I married still existed somewhere behind those eyes. The party went late. Garrett insisted we stay for the client dinner after. She moved toward the stairs, every motion deliberate, as if crossing a minefield. "I'm exhausted. Coming to bed?" "In a bit," she paused, perhaps noticing the bourbon bottle, perhaps sensing something in my tone. "Everything okay?" The question was so absurd, so monumentally disconnected from reality, that I nearly laughed. Was everything okay? Nothing would ever be okay again. But I wasn't ready for that conversation, not while the wound was this fresh, not while she was this intoxicated. "Just fine," I lied. "Long day. Go head up." She hesitated, then nodded and continued upstairs. I heard the bathroom door close, the shower running, ordinary sounds from an extraordinary night. I remained downstairs until I was certain she was asleep, then crept up to the guest bedroom, unwilling to lie beside her body and breathe in the scent of her perfume, mixed with the lingering molecules of her deceit. The next morning, Saturday, Laura behaved as if nothing had changed. If anything, she was unusually attentive, making my favorite breakfast, blueberry pancakes with real maple syrup, and asking about my plans for the day with apparent interest. The performance was flawless, and for a moment I almost questioned whether I'd imagined the entire conversation from the night before. "I was thinking we could drive up to that new winery this afternoon," she suggested, refilling my coffee cup. "The one Jenny told us about last month? It's supposed to have an amazing view of the valley." I studied her across the kitchen island, this stranger wearing my wife's face, moving through our home with practiced ease. Had she always been this good at deception, or was this a recently acquired skill? "Sure," I said, matching her casualness. "Sounds nice." But something inside me had already broken, like a load-bearing wall crumbling in slow motion. Throughout the day, as we drove to the winery, sampled overpriced Cabernets and took carefully staged photos for Laura's Instagram, I found myself noticing things I'd overlooked for months, possibly years. The new perfume she'd started wearing 3 months ago, more expensive, more sophisticated than her previous signature scent. When had that changed? Had I even commented on it? The gym sessions after work, a sudden commitment to fitness from a woman who'd previously mocked exercise enthusiasts as endorphin addicts. She'd been leaving the office at 6:30, but not arriving home until 8:45. The gym was a 15-minute drive from her office. Her phone perpetually set to silent, screen always facing down when not in her hand. The subtle shift in body language whenever she received certain texts, a slight turning away, a quickening of breath. The coldness in our physical relationship, passionate encounters reduced to perfunctory interactions, often initiated after she returned late from client dinners, as if fulfilling an obligation rather than expressing desire. All these red flags had been flapping violently in the gale force winds of her infidelity, and I'd attributed them to work stress, to the natural evolution of a long-term relationship, to anything but the obvious truth. That night I lay awake beside her sleeping form, the inches between us expanding into an unbridgeable chasm. I tried to recall when things had changed, when we'd stopped being partners and started being housemates with occasional benefits. Had there been a specific moment, a turning point I could identify? Or had it been gradual, like water slowly eroding stone until the structure collapses? The following week passed in a fog of forced normalcy. I went to work, sold insurance policies to people protecting families that might one day disintegrate despite their financial safeguards. I came home, made small talk over dinner, watched mindless television beside Laura while my mind churned with questions I wasn't ready to ask. I became a detective in my own home, hyper-aware of Laura's movements, her phone habits, the discrepancies in her explanations of late nights and weekend work sessions. I hated myself for this surveillance, for the person Betrayal was transforming me into. But I couldn't stop. The breaking point came on a Wednesday evening. Laura had texted that she was working late again, the third time that week. I'd stopped at the grocery store on my way home, picking up ingredients for a sad bachelor dinner of pasta and jarred sauce. As I searched for my keys at the front door, juggling grocery bags, I noticed Laura's purse on the hallway table. She must have forgotten it that morning. My keys weren't in my usual pocket. Thinking they might have slipped into Laura's purse when I set my things down at breakfast, I opened the leather bag. No keys, but something else caught my attention. A slim black smartphone I didn't recognize tucked into an interior pocket. I stood in our entryway, grocery bags at my feet, holding this unfamiliar device as if it were a live grenade. A second phone. The most cliched evidence of infidelity, straight out of a bad movie. Part of me wanted to laugh at the absurdity, at the predictable unraveling of my marriage through such a stereotypical discovery. I should have put it back. I should have respected her privacy, confronted her directly, maintained some dignity. But dignity is in short supply when your entire life is revealed to be partially fictional. I took the phone to our living room, set it on the coffee table, and stared at it until the groceries grew warm and my resolution grew cold. 2 hours later, Laura's key turned in the lock. I remained seated, the second phone now beside me on the couch. "Hey, you're home," she called, the forced cheerfulness in her voice painful to hear. "Sorry I'm so late. The Singapore team needed revised projections, and their morning is our..." She stopped abruptly as she entered the living room, her eyes fixing on the phone beside me. For one unguarded moment, naked panic crossed her face, a flash of genuine emotion breaking through the carefully maintained facade. Then the mask slipped back into place, though not as securely as before. "Where did you get that?" she asked, her voice carefully modulated. "It was in your purse. I was looking for my keys." "You went through my purse?" A clever deflection, shifting blame to my invasion of privacy rather than explaining the phone's existence. "What is it, Laura?" I asked quietly. She hesitated, calculating her response. I could almost see the options being weighed, discarded, refined behind her eyes. "It's for work," she finally said. "We're testing different corporate messenger platforms for the overseas offices." "On a separate phone?" "Yes." She set down her briefcase, movements deliberately casual. "Security protocols. They want to ensure the platforms can be completely isolated from personal devices." It wasn't the worst lie she could have invented on the spot. If I didn't know better, if I hadn't heard her conversation with Justin, I might have accepted it. "Why can't you test them on your personal phone?" I pressed. "Are you serious?" Her tone shifted from explanatory to indignant with practiced ease. "You're going through my things now? Testing my honesty like I'm one of your suspicious insurance claims?" The deflection was masterful, transforming her betrayal into my transgression. For a moment, I almost apologized. Almost. "I think you're having an affair," I said, the words hanging in the air between us like smoke after an explosion. She laughed, but it sounded hollow even to her own ears, judging by the way it trailed off uncertainly. "That's ridiculous. You're being paranoid." "Am I? Because I heard you and Justin at the party last week, in Garrett's office, talking about Austin, about your deal, about taking care of everything with the move." The color drained from her face. For several seconds, she said nothing, and in that silence, I had my confirmation. "You were spying on me?" she finally managed, but the accusation lacked conviction. "I was looking for you to say goodbye before I left. Jessica from accounting told me where you'd gone." "It's not," she began, then stopped, recalibrating. "You misunderstood what you heard." "Did I? Explain it to me then." I kept my voice steady, surprising myself with this newfound calm in the eye of the emotional hurricane. "Explain why you need a second phone. Explain why you're suddenly at the gym every night. Explain the new perfume, the late nights, the weekends at the office." She sank into the armchair across from me, her defenses visibly crumbling. "It's complicated, Alex." "I'm sure it is. Affairs usually are." "It's not just an affair." She looked up, and for the first time that night, possibly for the first time in months, I saw genuine emotion in her eyes. "Justin and I, it started as a professional collaboration. He has vision, connections. He sees my potential in ways that Garrett never did. The Austin opportunity is career-defining. And somewhere along the way, you started sleeping with him." It wasn't a question. She didn't deny it. "I didn't mean for that to happen." "But it did. And now you're planning to move to Austin together." "The transfer isn't final yet." "That's not a denial, Laura." She stood abruptly, pacing the room. "What do you want me to say? That I made a mistake? Fine, I made a mistake. But this opportunity—" "Stop." I held up my hand. "Just stop. This isn't about career opportunities. If it were, you would have discussed it with me, your husband. This is about you and Justin planning a new life together and trying to figure out the most convenient way to discard me in the process." "That's not fair." "Fair?" I laughed, a harsh sound I barely recognized as my own. "You want to talk about fair? Is it fair that I've spent the last 7 years believing we were building a life together while you were apparently counting the days until something better came along?" "It wasn't like that," she insisted. "We were good together once. But people change, Alex. We want different things now." "We or you?" She had no answer for that. I stood, suddenly exhausted by the performance we were both giving. Me, the righteously wronged husband. Her, the reluctantly caught wife. None of it felt real anymore. "I'm going to bed," I said. "The guest room. I suggest you sleep on what you want to tell me about the second phone, because we both know it's not for testing corporate messengers." I didn't sleep that night. Instead, I lay awake, replaying our entire relationship like a movie I'd misunderstood the first time around. The morning brought no clarity, only a bone-deep weariness and the certainty that nothing would ever be the same. Laura had left early, a hastily scribbled note about an emergency meeting, my only indication she hadn't simply fled in the night. The second phone remained on the coffee table, a black monolith of secrets. In the harsh light of morning, my resolve hardened. I needed to know the full extent of her betrayal. The passcode was my birthday. The irony might have made me laugh if the situation weren't so painfully absurd. 4 digits that unlocked a parallel universe where my wife existed as a different person entirely. The messages were abundant and explicit. Conversations with Justin stretching back nearly 6 months. Discussions about hotels, which ones were discreet, which ones didn't ask for ID at check-in. Plans for weekend getaways disguised as work conferences. Strategies for concealing their relationship from colleagues until the Austin transfer was finalized. Photos. God, the photos. Laura in hotel rooms I didn't recognize. In lingerie I'd never seen. In poses meant only for Justin's eyes. Justin in our bed, while I was at a 3-day insurance conference in Columbus. And then there were the voice messages. I played the most recent one with trembling hands. If everything goes smoothly, we will be in Austin in the summer. Justin's voice emerged from the small speaker, confident and conspiratorial. Alex doesn't suspect anything. By the time the transfer is announced, it'll be too late for him to interfere. And Garrett's already approved your replacement here, so there's no going back. This time next month, we'll be celebrating in our new penthouse. Just think. No more sneaking around. No more lying about late nights at the office. Just us, building the life we deserve. My heart sank to the floor, dragging my last shreds of denial with it. The person I had shared my life with for 7 years had long been a stranger to me. She was methodically building a new life, and I was only an obstacle in it, a problem to be managed, then discarded. For 3 days, I moved through my life in a fog. I went to work, smiled at colleagues, sold policies, attended meetings, all while carrying the crushing weight of what I now knew. Laura and I engaged in a grotesque pantomime of normalcy in the evenings, neither of us acknowledging the second phone or my continued residence in the guest room. I didn't confront her with what I'd found, not immediately. Instead, I did something that surprised even me. I made an appointment with a lawyer, not for a dramatic confrontation or hasty divorce filing, but to understand my options, to protect myself in whatever came next. Martin Schaefer was an old client who'd become something of a friend over the years. His specialty was family law, and his reputation for discretion was unmatched in Springfield. I laid everything out for him in his wood-paneled office. The overheard conversation, the second phone, the messages, the planned move to Austin. "I'm sorry you're going through this, Alex," he said when I finished. "Unfortunately, it's a story I hear all too often, though usually not with quite so much premeditation." "What are my options?" I asked. "Well, that depends on what you want. Reconciliation is always possible, though given what you've described," he trailed off diplomatically. "Not interested," I confirmed. He nodded unsurprised. "Then we prepare for divorce. Missouri is an equitable distribution state, not community property. The court will divide assets fairly, but not necessarily equally. Given the circumstances, we can make a strong case for a division that favors you." "I don't care about the money," I said. "I just want this over with as cleanly as possible." "Everyone says that at first," Martin replied kindly, "but you should care about the money. You've invested 7 years in this marriage. Don't let anger or pride cause you to make poor financial decisions." We spent the next hour discussing strategy, what to document, what to avoid saying or doing, how to prepare financially for the separation. When I left his office, I felt something I hadn't experienced since overhearing that fateful conversation at the party, a sense of control, however small, over my own life. That evening, I returned home with a plan. Laura was already there, preparing dinner as if we were still a normal couple having a normal evening after normal workdays. "I made that chickpea curry you like," she said as I entered the kitchen. Her voice was overly bright, her movements jittery. "The one from the cookbook your mother gave us last Christmas." I watched her for a moment. This woman I'd thought I knew so completely. Had she always been this good at pretending? Or was I witnessing a new performance, born of desperation and imminent exposure? Without a word, I placed a manila envelope on the kitchen island between us. She stared at it, spatula frozen in mid-stir. "What's that?" she asked, though I think she already knew. "Divorce papers," I said quietly, "and printouts of select conversations between you and Justin, and hotel receipts, and photos. I've been quite thorough." The spatula clattered into the pan. You went through my phone, she whispered. Not a question, but an accusation. Yes, just as you went through our marriage vows. Her face crumpled for an instant before hardening into something cold and defensive. You had no right. Probably not, I agreed, but I needed to know what I was dealing with, the extent of it, how long it had been going on, whether there was anything left worth saving, and 7 months of messages, 12 different hotels, 26 separate nights, 3 weekends disguised as work conferences, and one very detailed plan to relocate to Austin as regional director and head of digital strategy, leaving me behind like outdated technology. She flinched at the precision of my accounting, at the evidence that I knew everything, that there was nowhere left to hide. It wasn't supposed to happen like this, she said finally. How was it supposed to happen, Laura? Was there a kind way to dismantle our life together while building a new one with someone else? A gentle way to betray 7 years of trust? I was going to tell you about Austin, after it was confirmed. As a fait accompli. How considerate. She turned off the stove, the curry forgotten. What do you want, Alex? To punish me? To make me suffer? Will that make you feel better? I don't want to punish you, I said, surprised to find it was true. I just want out. I want a life where I'm not an inconvenience to be managed, a problem to be solved. I want to be with someone who sees me as an asset, not a liability. It wasn't always like this, she protested weakly. We had good years. Did we? I'm not sure anymore. I'm not sure I ever really knew you. She looked at the envelope again, her facade cracking. Are these actual divorce papers? Just drafts. Review them. We can do this the easy way or the hard way. The easy way means you don't contest anything. We split everything 50-50, and we're both free to move on with our lives within 60 days. The hard way, ... I gestured at the envelope. The hard way involves sworn testimony about affairs, misappropriated funds for hotel rooms, and potentially your company being drawn into a very public, very messy divorce proceeding right before a major organizational restructuring. You wouldn't, she breathed. I don't want to, I corrected, but I will if you force my hand. For a long moment she said nothing, staring at the envelope as if it might spontaneously combust under her gaze. Then unexpectedly, she began to cry. Not the calculated tears I'd seen her deploy in arguments past, but genuine, body-shaking sobs that seemed to surprise her as much as they did me. Alex, I was wrong, she managed between gasps. It was just an affair, a stupid, reckless mistake. I don't want to lose you. We can fix this. Couples therapy, a fresh start somewhere new. Together. Please. I'd imagined this moment, her breakdown, her pleas for reconciliation. In my fantasies, I'd felt vindicated, triumphant even. In reality, I felt only a profound sadness for all that had been lost, all that had never truly existed. You know, Laura, I said softly, I was blind for a long time, but now I see, and I do not want to be where they do not respect me. I do respect you, she insisted, reaching for my hand across the island. I stepped back, beyond her reach. Number you don't. You haven't for a long time, if ever. And that's okay. I don't need you to respect me anymore. I just need you to sign the papers and let me go. She stared at me as if seeing me for the first time. Not the accommodating husband she'd taken for granted, but a man with boundaries, with self-respect, with the courage to walk away from a beautiful lie toward an uncertain but authentic future. I'll review them, she said finally, her voice small. I nodded and turned to leave the kitchen. At the doorway, I paused. For what it's worth, I hope Austin brings you everything you're looking for. I really do. In the end, Laura signed the papers without contest. The divorce was finalized 3 months later, by which time she and Justin had indeed relocated to Austin. Without the fanfare of dual promotions they'd anticipated, as Westbridge Capital's management was less than thrilled to discover their affair and the potential liability it represented. I sold our house, too many memories, too many ghosts haunting its rooms, and moved to a downtown loft I'd always secretly coveted, but Laura had dismissed as too urban. I changed jobs, joining a boutique firm specializing in insurance for tech startups, where my combination of traditional insurance knowledge and newfound appreciation for life's uncertainties proved unexpectedly valuable. Sometimes in quiet moments, I still wonder if I could have seen the signs earlier, prevented the pain, salvaged something worth keeping. But those moments grow less frequent with time, replaced by a dawning recognition that what was broken wasn't our marriage, but the foundation upon which it was built. This story isn't really about betrayal, though that's its most obvious feature. It's about insight, the painful, necessary clarity that comes from seeing things as they truly are, not as we wish them to be. It's about how a person loses himself, trying desperately to hold on to someone else's lies. And it's about the courage to let go, to release what never truly belonged to you in the first place. Laura and I haven't spoken since the divorce was finalized. I heard through mutual friends that she and Justin lasted less than a year in Austin before their relationship imploded spectacularly, their professional reputations tarnished by their personal choices. She's in Chicago now, apparently, rebuilding her career from scratch. As for me, I'm dating again, cautiously. I'm learning to trust. Others, yes, but more importantly, myself, my instincts, my perceptions, my worth. Sometimes you have to let go of who you thought you were to discover who you might become. Sometimes the most devastating losses clear the way for the most authentic gains. And sometimes what sounds like the end of your story is actually just the beginning.